Hi, welcome to Connecting Classrooms TV series brought to you by the British Council. In the previous class, we looked at digital literacy. Today, we will be looking at the topic citizenship. Please participate actively. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the British Council Introduction to Core Skills for Teachers. The aim of the course is to discuss and plan ways of integrating core skills teaching and learning into everyday classroom practice. This does not mean changing the curriculum. I'll repeat that statement. This does not mean changing the curriculum. It means adding an extra dimension to what you teach and how you teach it. These are the key issues and techniques we'll be looking at in this TV series. What do we mean by deep learning? What skills and strategies can promote deep learning? How can we make space in the curriculum for core skills to be developed? What teaching approaches work best to help students develop core skills? How do we get others, such as teachers, head teachers, and parents, to support the embedding of these skills in the curriculum? So as we go along, keep thinking about these questions. What do we expect of you? We want you to think hard about how to apply the core skills to the subjects that you teach. Try to implement some of the new ideas and approaches you have learned in your teaching. Connect with colleagues to share what you're learning and discuss how you're trying out the new ideas. So welcome to Unit 4, and the core skill we'll be looking at is citizenship. Unit 4 is about citizenship. The learning outcomes for Unit 4 include understand how to engage with the core skill of citizenship, understand the impact of global risk, raising students who are globally aware citizens. Let's look at the British Council definition of citizenship. It says active, globally aware citizens who have the skills, knowledge, and motivation to address issues of human and environmental sustainability and work towards a fairer world in a spirit of mutual respect and open dialogue. Developing students' understanding of what it means to be a citizen of their own country and their own country's values. So again, it is active, globally aware citizens who have the skills, knowledge, and motivation to address issues of human and environmental sustainability and work towards a fairer world in a spirit of mutual respect and open dialogue, developing students' understanding of what it means to be a citizen of their own country and their own country's values. So that's the British Council's definition of citizenship. I hope that makes sense, and I'm hoping that you can take down notes in your notebook and see if you can come up with your own definition of citizenship. I like using this image a lot because it tells a story. It tells of how animals are even kinder to their own kind when you compare them to humans. And it says if animals could speak, mankind would weep. They show more empathy than humans would ever show. And it baffles me at times when I see people who are supposed to be global citizens don't show empathy for people who are suffering in different parts of the world outside of their immediate environment. So say, for instance, there's chaos in Syria. We should show empathy. We shouldn't say Syria, they should burn. If things are happening elsewhere, in Ghana, in Canada, in the US, in the UK, in Nigeria, for instance, wherever it is happening, as global citizens, we must have empathy. We must have empathy. Now, there's something we'd like you to take note of. It's about global risk. And there are two elements of that. There's a global risk and then there's a trend. Now, a global risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, can cause significant negative impact for several countries or industries within the next 10 years. And a typical example is what we're going through now, COVID-19 pandemic. It has changed the way we think, we work, we live, we teach, we learn, and it has changed it completely. And for the next 10 years, the impact will be continuously felt. And a trend is defined as a long-term pattern that is currently taking place and that could amplify global risk and or alter the relationship between them. An example is failure of national governance. A lot of countries who have poor national governance are struggling to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so that's a global risk and that's a trend. Global risk, again, is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, can cause significant negative impact for several countries or industries within the next 10 years. And an example we gave is the COVID-19 pandemic. And a trend is defined as a long term pattern that is currently taking place and that could amplify global risk and or alter the relationship between them. And the example we gave is failure of national governance. I like you to think very clearly about this activity. What kind of people do we want our students to be? And if I make it a very personal question, what kind of people do you want your students to be as a teacher? Think about it. When you see them in the class, when you think about them, even when you're at home, what kind of people do you want your students to be? Please write in your notebook at least 10 qualities or 10 attributes or 10 skills that you think they should have or the kinds of people you think they should be. You have 1 minute for this activity and your time starts now. I hope you're writing. Think about it clearly. What kind of people do you want your students to be? And in a more general term, what kind of people do we want our students to be? You have a few more seconds to write out your answers in your notebook. Hope you're writing. What kind of people do we want our students to be? Okay, so let's take a look at what we have on your screen right now. Several qualities, several attributes that we want them to have. So let's start with the left-hand side of the screen. We want students who are globally aware, who ask questions, who are confident, who listen and reflect, who make a difference. Students who persevere, who are critical, who communicate well, critical thinkers. They have good self-esteem, they are creative. We want students, if you look at the right-hand side of your screen, we want students who thirst for knowledge, who are independent, who are willing to have a go, who get on well with others, they generate ideas, they are flexible, they are not rigid, they are literate, they show initiative, they are curious, they act with integrity. And that is very key. Even you as a teacher must act with integrity. So if you tell your students you will be in class by 9 a.m. and you show up by 11 a.m., you don't have integrity. We want students who can learn from their mistakes. So the school environment should be a place where they are not afraid to fail, but also a place where they can learn from their mistakes. They think for themselves and they have a can-do attitude. I will just go through, all of these things again, randomly. Students who are globally aware, who are critical thinkers, who make a difference, are willing to have a goal. They get on well with others. They generate ideas. They are literate. They show initiative. They communicate well. They have good self-esteem. They are creative. They learn from their mistakes. They act with integrity. They think for themselves. And finally, they have a can-do attitude. We want students who are like this, who have all of these attributes or all of these skills. Now, the Sustainable Development Goal 4.7 says that by 2030, we should ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. And the indicator for this goal is the extent to which global citizenship education and education for sustainable development, including gender equality and human rights, are mainstreamed at all levels in national education policies, the curricula, teacher education, and student assessment. So the expectation is that this Sustainable Development Goal 4.7 and all of its indicators are mainstreamed in all levels in the national education policies in the curricula and teacher education and the student assessment, so that every aspect of our education system has this covered, And I think it's a very important point to make that citizenship, global citizenship, is a very, very important skill that our students must have. Okay, now the next activity, and in this activity actually, we want to look at how you bring global citizenship into your teaching and assessment. So you need to look at the image on the right, published by UNESCO. And again, this activity is about how do you bring global citizenship into your teaching and assessment. So when you're teaching and when you're assessing, how do you infuse global citizenship, or how do you embed it into your teaching and assessment? So let's take a look at the image on the right hand side of your screen, published by UNESCO. Now it says, which skills does global citizenship education aim to develop? There are three of them: cognitive skills, social emotional skill, behavioral skills. Now, the cognitive skill looks at how to acquire knowledge, understanding, and critical thinking about global issues and interconnectedness, interdependency of countries and different populations. So, how do we get our students to acquire knowledge, show understanding and critical thinking about global issues and interconnectedness, interdependency of countries and different populations? The social emotional skill looks at how do we get our students to have a sense of belonging to a common humanity, sharing values and responsibilities, demonstrating empathy, solidarity, and respect for differences and diversity. Again, the social emotional skill looks at how we can get our students to have a sense of belonging to a common humanity, sharing values and responsibilities, demonstrating empathy, solidarity, and respect for differences and diversity. The behavioral skill looks at how to act responsibly at local, national, and global levels for a more peaceful and sustainable development. So, how do we get our students to, act responsibly at local, national, and global levels for a more peaceful and sustainable world? Now, look at the four questions to the left hand side of your screen, and I would like you to answer the questions as clearly as possible in your notebook. Number one, how do you include the cognitive skills in your teaching? Number two, how do you include the social emotional skills in your teaching? Number three, how do you include the behavioral skills in your teaching? And number four, could you integrate these skills into your teaching in more depth? So look at the right hand side of your screen to see the definition of the different global citizenship supported skills, and then look back to the left hand side to answer the questions on your screen. You have 1 minute for this activity, and your time starts now. Hope you're working on the task. I'll read the question again, or the set of questions. Number one, how do you include the cognitive skills in your teaching? How do you include the socio emotional skills in your teaching? How do you include the behavioral skills in your teaching? Could you integrate these skills into your teaching in more depth? And then look at the right hand side of your screen to see the definition of the skills we are talking about. And you have a few more seconds to see if you can wrap up this activity. Hope you're still working on the activity. You have a few more seconds to go. All right, let's move on to the next activity. Now, this is an individual task on global awareness and citizenship, and I'd like to read the instructions to you. So you have two slides after this, and there's something we'd like you to do. In the next two slides, you will see the short Oxfam extracts as part of a framework for global learning. I want you to consider the information along with what you have learned from the previous activities. Record in a useful way in your notebook actually any pertinent thoughts and ideas about global awareness and citizenship and its interplay with core skills. Also record any ideas you might have about ways of introducing global awareness and citizenship to your students. So I'll take that again. In the next two slides, you will see the short Oxfam extracts as part of the framework for global learning. Consider the information along with what you have learned from the previous activities. Record in a useful way any pertinent thoughts and ideas about global awareness and citizenship and its interplay with core skills. Also, record any ideas you might have about ways of introducing global awareness and citizenship to your students. So, in this first slide, global citizenship involves exploring at least four types of connection. At least four types of connection, but here we'll look at three. Our common humanity, our common humanity, the connections we have with all other human beings in terms of our similarities and common needs, our global interconnectedness, links we have to other people and places through trade, technology, migration, political systems, our shared environment, and so on. Links between issues, example, poverty and climate change. And again, I'll probably add COVID-19 pandemic. The parallels that many global issues have with matters in our immediate environment, for example, sharing of resources or conflict in the classroom. So I'll take that again. And remember that you need to write out what you're thinking. How would you introduce citizenship core skills to your students in your next class, looking at all of these four types of connection or three types of connection that we have according to Oxfam. So again, the first connection is our common humanity and the connections we have with all other human beings in terms of our similarities and common needs. Our global interconnectedness, which is the links we have to other people and places through trade, technology, migration, political systems, and our shared environment, and so on. Links between issues, poverty and climate change, and the parallels that many global issues have with matters in our immediate environment, for example, sharing resources or conflict. So take a good look at these three that we have mentioned on this slide. This is from Oxfam, exploring viewpoints and values. Exploring viewpoints and values. Our common humanity, our global interconnectedness, and then the links between issues. I'll give you a few seconds to just still look at this slide and the points that have been raised here, and maybe make a note or two in your notebook about them. Hope you're writing. I have a few more seconds to look at it, and then I'll move on to the next slide. So what I'll do is to read that out again for us to see. And then why I'm reading it again is for us to know that these are important points to take notes. All right. So our common humanity, which means the connections we have with all other human beings in terms of our similarities and common needs. Think about the connections we have with all other human beings. Think about our similarities. Think about our common needs. Okay? Think about our similarities and then our common needs. And now look at our global interconnectedness. Look at the links we have to other people and places through trade, technology, migration, political systems, and our shared environment, and so on. Take, for example, technology. I mean, you can be anywhere and in any part of the world and connect to somebody elsewhere. That's how interconnected we have become. All right. Now, also look at the COVID-19 pandemic. Started off somewhere and it has spread to several countries, several places, several nooks and crannies of the world. That is how interconnected we are. And then finally, look at the links between issues. Example, how is poverty linked with climate change? Also, look at the parallels that many global issues have with matters in our immediate environment, which includes sharing resources or even conflict. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, we all interpret the world around us through the lenses of our own cultural background, values, and experience. It therefore follows that there will be a range of perspectives on any given issue, and that we cannot achieve a full understanding on any issue without exploring all perspectives. So I'll take that again. We all interpret the world around us through the lenses of our own cultural background. And that's the truth. How you view things, how you see things is determined by the lens you wear. And that by lens we mean your cultural background. Your cultural background plays a lot of role in how you interpret the world around you. Your values and even your experience also play roles in how you interpret the world around you. So it therefore follows that there will be a range of perspectives on any given issue, and that we cannot achieve a full understanding of on any issue without exploring all perspectives. What this means is that we see the world differently. We see the world differently. And the beauty of global citizenship is that you also, you honor and respect the viewpoints of others. You don't say it has to be the way you're saying it. We all have different perspectives. People see things differently. You don't judge before you consider different perspectives. You must consider different perspectives. Why is he thinking this way? Why is she talking like this? What has informed the way he's reasoning? You must consider different perspectives. And to do so, it involves developing one, awareness that our knowledge often consists of just one, albeit dominant perspective. You can't see things, you know, without understanding that how we see things and our awareness and our knowledge consists of just one dominant perspective and is determined by your culture, your values, or your experience. Number two, self awareness, which includes awareness of our own values and assumptions. So if you're self aware, you're also aware of how your own values and assumptions inform how you see things around you. And that is why you're having a conversation with somebody who sees things differently. The first thing you need to do is to reflect back on your own values and your own assumptions and to say to yourself that I am actually seeing these things from my own perspective because of my values and assumptions. Number three, respect for diversity. We must respect diversity, especially if you work in a team. And that's why it's important that if you have your kids in a group or in the class, I mean your students in a class or in a group, you must teach them and again model the fact that they should respect diversity. There's richness in diversity. There's richness when you have people with divergent views coming together to solve a problem, to think about the problem and solve the issues the way they should be. All right? There's no one size fits all solution to any given problem. So people must respect diversity. People must respect diversity, and our students must be made to understand the importance of respecting diversity. Number four, effective communication skills, which includes arguing a case and listening respectfully to other people's viewpoints. Remember when we talked about the core skill of communication and collaboration, we looked at exploratory talk. This is actually what it is. So we want our students to communicate effectively, and that includes arguing a case and listening respectfully to other people's viewpoints. Very important. That you get our kids to the point where whenever they engage in a conversation, especially in a group, that they are communicating effectively by arguing a case and listening respectfully to other people's viewpoints. To other people's viewpoints. All right. So I'll go back again so that we will still understand where we are coming from. And this slide that I've gone back to says global citizenship involves exploring at least four types of connection. Very important, four types of connection. And the first type of connection is our common humanity. Our common humanity. Begin to think about how you would embed this in your classwork. How would you teach students to appreciate our common humanity? And our common humanity means the connections we have with all other human beings in terms of our similarities and common needs. Are there things you can do to show the students the importance of this commonality in our humanity? Number two, our global interconnectedness, the links we have to other people and places through trade, technology, migration, political systems, and our shared environment, and so on. Again, how would you teach your students this? How would you embed it in your lesson plan, for instance? How would you teach it in the classroom? And the third one says the links between issues, poverty and climate change. How would you show the linkages between several issues? How would you teach that? So I want you to begin to think clearly, and then possibly write down in your notebook, whether it is projects, whether it's project-based teaching, whether it is group work, whether it is assignments, whether it is a whole group task that you're giving to your students, how would you bring this thing to the fore for them? How would you get them to the point where they are appreciating the fact that we have a common humanity, that we are interconnected globally? How would you show them that several issues are linked together? For example, poverty and climate change. All right, so think about these questions that I've asked and then possibly just write down in your notebook how you would teach this lesson, whether in a traditional classroom or on the virtual platform. So think about these questions that I've asked. Finally, we come back to the last slide that we looked at. And remember, it says we all interpret the world around us through the lenses of our own cultural background, values, and experience. So it means how you see things is determined by three elements: your cultural background, your values, and your experience. And your experience. Again, how you interpret the world around you and how every other person interprets the world around them, including our students, is that they see things through the lenses of their cultural background, their values, and their experience. So it therefore follows that there will be a range of perspectives on any given issue, and that we cannot achieve a full understanding of any issue without exploring all perspectives. And we said initially to do so involves the awareness that our knowledge often consists of just one or be dominant perspective. To do so also involves developing self awareness, and that is the awareness of our own values and assumptions. It also involves developing respect for diversity. Respect for diversity. It involves effective communication skills, including arguing a case and listening respectfully to other people's viewpoints. Again, remember this is taken from the Oxfam website and the Oxfam Exploring Viewpoints and Values literature. So think about all we have discussed and start thinking clearly about how you're going to teach this in your subject. How would you get your students to begin to think and act like global citizens? And the question is then for you as well, how will you as a teacher teach like a global citizen? How is your language going to be affected after going through this course? What you say in the class, how you interpret the world around you, and how you're going to, model that for your students in the classroom as well. And that brings us to the end of the core skill citizenship.
Hope you found today's class useful. Thanks for watching and see you in the next class. Bye.